Have you ever witnessed a moment when a single sentence changed someone's life forever? When the past you've been running from suddenly catches up in the most unexpected place? If you've ever felt that cold rush of fear when your carefully constructed world threatens to collapse, this story will resonate deep in your soul. Before we dive in, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that remind us how connected our lives truly are. Maria Russo wiped her sweaty palms against her black apron for the 5th time that evening. 6 months at Bella Notte and she still felt her heart race whenever she approached a new table. The restaurant hummed with the gentle clinking of silverware and murmured conversations, the warm glow of pendant lights casting a honeyed sheen over the rustic wooden tables. It was Tuesday, usually quiet, but tonight every table was filled, and Maria's section included a corner booth where an elderly gentleman sat alone, studying the menu with intense concentration. "You've got table 7, Gina," the head waitress said as she breezed past with a tray of drinks. The old man. "He's a regular, comes in every Tuesday, always orders the same thing, but insists on reading the entire menu first." Maria nodded, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. At 23, she was the newest and youngest server at the upscale Italian restaurant in Boston's North End. Her colleagues didn't know much about her, just that she'd moved from a small town in Pennsylvania, was taking night classes in business administration, and rarely spoke about her past. What they didn't know was that Maria Russo wasn't her real name. That 6 months ago, she'd been Mariella Ricci from Sicily, daughter of a man who had once been consigliere to one of the most powerful Cosa Nostra families in Palermo. They didn't know that she'd been in witness protection since she was 16, when she testified against her father's associates after he was murdered for refusing to participate in a particularly brutal vendetta. Maria approached the table, notepad in hand, her practiced smile firmly in place. The elderly man looked up, his weathered face creasing into a polite smile. He had to be in his 80s, with a full head of silver hair and eyes the color of aged whiskey. "Buona sera," she said, the standard greeting she used with all customers at the Italian restaurant. "Can I start you with something to drink this evening?" The old man's eyes crinkled at the corners. "Ah, you're new here," he said, his English perfect but with the unmistakable cadence of a native Italian speaker. "I'll have my usual, a glass of Montepulciano." Maria nodded, making a note though she had no idea what his usual was. She'd have to ask Gina. As she turned to leave, the old man spoke again. "You're Italian?" he asked. Maria hesitated. This was always dangerous territory. "My grandparents were," she answered with the rehearsed response she'd been using for years. "From where in Italy?" he pressed, his interest seemingly genuine. "Sicily," she answered before she could stop herself. It was the truth, at least. The old man's face brightened. "Ah, Sicilia. La mia terra natale. De quale part?" Maria froze. He was asking which part of Sicily she was from, in the Sicilian dialect. The dialect she'd grown up speaking at home, the one her father had insisted she maintain even after they'd fled to America when she was 10. The dialect she hadn't spoken aloud in 7 years. Something in her cracked open, a longing for home, for identity, for the connection to her roots that she'd been forced to sever. Before she could think better of it, she responded in the same dialect, near Palermo, in a small village in the mountains. The words felt both foreign and achingly familiar on her tongue. The old man's eyes widened with delight, and he launched into a stream of Sicilian, telling her about his hometown just outside Palermo, asking if she knew certain landmarks, certain families. Maria answered cautiously, careful not to reveal too much, but the simple act of speaking her native dialect after so many years of careful self-censorship felt like taking a full breath after being underwater. She didn't notice the man at table 9, sitting with a young boy of about 8, slowly lowering his fork, his face draining of color as he listened to her exchange with the elderly Sicilian. "I'll get your wine," Maria said finally, switching back to English and retreating to the bar. As she waited for the bartender to pour the Montepulciano, she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she found herself face to face with the man from table 9. Up close, she could see he was in his late 30s, with dark hair graying slightly at the temples and intense blue eyes currently narrowed in what looked like a mixture of shock and suspicion. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low and controlled. "I couldn't help overhearing your conversation with that gentleman." "You speak Sicilian?" Maria's stomach tightened. "Just a little," she said, attempting a casual shrug. "My grandparents taught me some phrases." The man's jaw tightened. That wasn't some phrases. That was fluent Sicilian with a Palermo accent. He glanced over at the elderly man, who was now typing something on an ancient flip phone. "Do you know who that is?" Maria shook her head, the first tendrils of real fear beginning to curl around her spine. "That's Salvatore Lucchesi," the man said, watching her face carefully for a reaction. Maria felt as though the floor had dropped out from under her. Salvatore Lucchesi, father of Vincenzo Lucchesi, the capo di tutti capi who had ordered her father's execution. The man whose organization she had helped federal prosecutors dismantle with her testimony. The man who had put a $2 million bounty on her head. I don't know that name," she managed, but her voice betrayed her. The man's expression hardened. "I think you do. And I think you're in danger." He glanced back at his table, where the young boy was watching them curiously while munching on breadsticks. "We both are." Before Maria could respond, the bartender slid the glass of wine across the bar to her. "Table 7's Montepulciano," he announced cheerfully, oblivious to the tension crackling between them. Maria took the wine with trembling hands. "I have to serve this," she said, desperate for an escape from this conversation. The man stepped aside, but as she moved past him, he murmured, "Meet me outside when your shift ends." 11 o'clock. Back alley. "It's important." Maria delivered the wine to Salvatore Lucchesi with a smile that felt like it might shatter her face. The old man beamed at her, continuing to speak in Sicilian, telling her she reminded him of his late wife when she was young. Maria responded on autopilot, her mind racing. Who was the man from table 9? How did he recognize the Lucchesi name? And most importantly, had she just blown her cover in the most catastrophic way possible? Throughout the rest of her shift, Maria moved through her duties like a sleepwalker. She avoided table 9 as much as possible, asking Gina to deliver their main courses. When she did glance their way, she found the man watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. The boy with him seemed oblivious, happily devouring his spaghetti and chattering away. Salvatore Lucchesi left at 9:30, leaving Maria a generous tip and telling her he looked forward to speaking with her again next Tuesday. The words felt like a death sentence. By 10:50, the restaurant had emptied. Maria changed out of her uniform in the staff bathroom, her hands shaking so badly she could barely button her jeans. She should run. Pack her emergency bag from her apartment and disappear again. Contact her handler and request a new identity, a new location. But something about the man from table 9 nagged at her. He knew something that might be crucial to her survival. At 11:05, Maria pushed open the back door of the restaurant and stepped into the narrow alley behind Bella Notte. The night air was cool against her flushed skin, carrying the mingled scents of garbage and garlic from the restaurant's kitchen. For a moment, she thought the alley was empty, that the man had given up waiting. Then a shadow detached itself from the wall. "You came," he said, stepping into the pool of yellow light cast by the restaurant's back door. "I wasn't sure you would." "Who are you?" Maria demanded, keeping her distance, one hand in her pocket where she gripped her pepper spray. "My name is Daniel Rossi," he said. Though 7 years ago, it was Daniele Rossini. Maria felt the blood drain from her face. Daniele Rossini, the undercover FBI agent who had infiltrated the Lucchesi family. The man who had been her handler when she first entered witness protection. The man who had disappeared without a trace 3 months after her testimony, rumored to have been compromised and executed. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. Daniel's mouth twisted in a humorless smile. "So are you, Mariella Ricci." The sound of her real name spoken aloud after so many years made her flinch. "How did you recognize me?" "It's been 7 years. I was 16. I never forget a face," he said simply. "Especially not one that saved my life." Maria frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I never. Your testimony gave us enough to arrest Vincenzo's lieutenants before they could act on the information they had about me," Daniel explained. "They knew I was FBI. They were coming for me that night. But the arrests threw everything into chaos, and I managed to get out. New identity, new life." He glanced back toward the restaurant. "New responsibilities." "The boy," Maria realized. "He's your son?" Daniel nodded. "Luca. He was just a baby when all this happened. His mother died of cancer 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Maria said automatically, though her mind was racing with more pressing concerns. "But why are you telling me this? Why risk exposing yourself?" Daniel's expression grew grave. "Because Salvatore Lucchesi just texted his son. I saw him do it. And I know enough Sicilian to understand what he was saying about the beautiful young waitress who speaks the dialect of home." Maria felt her knees weaken. "Oh God." "Vincenzo was released from federal prison 4 months ago," Daniel continued. "The case against him fell apart when key witnesses recanted. He's been rebuilding his organization, reaching out to old contacts. And he's never forgotten about you, Mariella. The girl whose testimony cost him 5 years of his life and millions in seized assets." "I need to run," Maria said, already backing toward the street. "I need to contact the marshals, get a new identity." "It's too late for that," Daniel said, his voice gentle but firm. "Salvatore has already identified you. By tomorrow, Vincenzo will know exactly where you are. And this time, he won't send someone else to do the job. He'll come himself." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Maria demanded, panic rising in her throat. Daniel took a step closer. "Come with me. Tonight. I still have contacts, people who owe me favors. People outside the system who can help us disappear properly." "Us?" Maria echoed. "Luca and I were already planning to move on," Daniel explained. "I've been hearing whispers, seeing signs. The Lucchesis have been getting too close. Tonight was just confirmation that it's time to go." Maria stared at him, this ghost from her past offering her a lifeline she hadn't known she needed. "Why would you help me? You barely knew me back then. I was just a scared kid you had to protect because it was your job." Something flickered in Daniel's eyes, a warmth, a recognition. Because 7 years ago, a 16-year-old girl had the courage to stand up against the most dangerous men in Sicily when grown men twice her age were too terrified to speak. Because that girl lost everything, her home, her identity, her future, to do what was right. He paused. "And because I've been where you are, and I know what it's like to face it alone." Maria felt tears burning behind her eyes. For 7 years, she'd been running, hiding, looking over her shoulder. For 7 years, she'd been Maria Russo, a fabrication, a ghost with no past and no future beyond survival. The thought of continuing to run was exhausting. But the thought of running with someone who understood, who knew the weight she carried, it felt different somehow. "What about Luca?" she asked. "I'd be putting him in danger." "Luca is already in danger," Daniel said grimly. "Has been since the day he was born. At least this way, we face it together." A car backfired somewhere in the distance, and Maria jumped, her nerves stretched to breaking. "How do I know I can trust you?" she asked, though something in her already did. Daniel reached slowly into his jacket pocket and withdrew a worn leather wallet. From it, He pulled a faded photograph and handed it to her. Maria took it with trembling fingers. It showed a much younger Daniel in an FBI jacket, standing beside a teenage girl with frightened eyes and a defiant tilt to her chin. Herself, on the day she'd entered witness protection. "I kept it to remind myself why I do what I do," Daniel said quietly. "Why the sacrifices are worth it." Maria handed the photo back, a lump in her throat. "When do we leave?" "Now," Daniel said. "I have a car 3 blocks from here. Luca is already inside with our bags. We'll drive north tonight, cross into Canada by morning. I have a safe house in Quebec where we can regroup, make a plan." Maria hesitated, thinking of her small apartment, her few possessions, the life she'd built from nothing. "I need to get my things." "No," Daniel cut her off. "Nothing from your apartment. It's too risky. We'll get you whatever you need once we're safe." The finality of it hit her. She was about to disappear again, this time without even the clothes on her back. But what choice did she have? "Okay," she said, squaring her shoulders. "Let's go." They moved quickly through the darkened streets of the North End, Maria constantly glancing over her shoulder, expecting to see Vincenzo Lucchesi's men at every corner. When they reached the nondescript sedan parked on a quiet side street, Daniel unlocked it with a click of his key fob. In the back seat, Luca was curled up asleep, a stuffed dinosaur clutched to his chest. "He can sleep through anything," Daniel said with a fond smile as he opened the passenger door for Maria. "It's a useful skill in our situation." As Maria slid into the seat, she caught sight of her reflection in the side mirror, pale, wide-eyed, looking every bit the frightened girl she'd been 7 years ago. But something else was there too, something that hadn't been present before. Resolve, perhaps. Or hope. Daniel started the engine and pulled smoothly away from the curb. As the familiar streets of Boston began to fall away behind them, Maria felt a strange sense of liberation mingling with her fear. For 7 years, she'd been running from her past. Now, somehow, she was running toward a future, uncertain and dangerous, but a future nonetheless. "What will we do?" she asked as the city lights receded in the rearview mirror. "After Quebec, I mean." Daniel glanced at her, then back at the sleeping form of his son in the back seat. "We'll figure it out together," he said. "That's what families do." Families. The word echoed in Maria's mind, stirring memories of a time before witness protection, before the murder of her father, before her life had shattered into fragments. A time when she'd belonged somewhere, to someone. As the car accelerated onto the highway heading north, Maria Russo, once Mariella Ricci, allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, that she might find that belonging again. The night stretched dark and vast before them, full of uncertainty and danger. But for the first time in 7 years, Maria wasn't facing it alone. 3 days later, in a small cabin on the shores of Lac Saint-Jean in Quebec, Maria stood at the window watching Daniel and Luca skip stones across the glassy surface of the lake. The morning sun caught in Luca's dark curls as he laughed at his father's exaggerated demonstration of the perfect stone-skipping technique. They'd arrived at the cabin in the early hours of the morning after crossing the border, all of them exhausted but too wired to sleep. The cabin belonged to an old friend of Daniel's from his college days, someone who asked no questions and demanded no explanations. It was rustic but comfortable, with 2 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, and a view of the lake that stole Maria's breath the first time she saw it in the light of dawn. Now, watching father and son by the water's edge, Maria felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Relief at having escaped Boston.